Eritu ano to obunaru fata aniro anna fatadam. Eritu ano to obunaru fata aniro anna fatadam.
At the far end of our village lived an old man named Arabmat. Arabmat was a big man, a man of name, reputation. He had 2 wives, lots of children, a big family. And he was old, but old by Wabaku standards. He was probably only 50 years old or so. But in a culture where there's no written record keeping, no one really knows how old they are here. Somebody knocked on my door one day and asked me if I would go to Arabmat's house because he was very sick. So I walked through the village, walked up Arabmat's ladder, went up into his house and sat down. He was laying on the floor of his house. He had his head propped up on a makeshift pillow. And as my eyes adjusted to the darkness in his house, I could see that his legs were swollen to twice their normal size. And when I looked at his skin, I could see that his skin had this yellowish tint to it. And then I saw his eyes, and the whites of his eyes were yellow. I knew that he was severely jaundiced, and I started asking questions. I asked him, when did the sickness start? What day did the sickness come up? I asked if he was feeling any other kinds of pain, trying to get a record of his symptoms. Was there an injury? Did you fall? He gave me some of those answers. His family filled in the rest of the details. I was writing all these symptoms in the timeline down in my notebook, and I told him this. I'm going to send talk to our village, or our mission doctor. And the mission doctor, maybe he knows of a medicine that I can give to you that would help you with this sickness. So I left Arabmat's house, I went back home, and I sent an email to our mission doctor. A couple days later, I got an email reply back from the doctor, and he said, based on the symptoms you described, it sounds like this guy is in the late stages of liver failure, and he expected that this guy would die in the next few days. It was a heavy, difficult email to receive. So I sat and I was getting ready, thinking through what I would say. How was I going to relay this news to Arabmat and his family? And as I was planning out my words, I was hit with this sudden realization. We hadn't been in Wabaku very long, but we knew enough about Wabaku culture to know how they thought about death. And death in the Wabaku mind is like this. Every death in Wabaku is murder. Nobody dies from natural causes, from an accident, from old age. No, every death is a result of the evil spirits coming and shooting somebody with an invisible arrow. The evil spirits come and kill people. That's the only reason people die. Now, the evil spirits will come and shoot you with an invisible arrow for 2 reasons. The first reason is that somebody has violated the spirit's laws, their rules. Either the sick person themselves or somebody in their clan has violated the spirit's laws. The spirits get angry. They come and shoot you with an invisible spear, and it gives you sickness and maybe death. The other reason is that maybe somebody, an enemy, has hired a sorcerer, hired a witch doctor, a sangu maman, to summon a spirit to come shoot you with an invisible arrow. But in either situation, the evil spirits come, kill you with an invisible arrow, and it's always somebody's fault, either by breaking the rules or by hiring a sorcerer. We knew enough about their culture to know this, so I knew that they could very easily misinterpret what I was about to try and communicate to them. Because in their world, nobody knows that you're going to die ahead of time. It's always a surprise. The only time you could know that somebody is going to die is if you yourself had hired the sorcerer to kill that person. Otherwise, nobody knows when someone's going to die. So I was debating within myself, do I go and tell the family what the doctor told me, or do I keep it to myself so as to not paint a target on my back for being blamed for his death if he does die? I was thinking it through, processing, debating, and in the end, I decided if it were me or my family, I would want to know. I would want to know that these were the last moments we had with this person. So despite the risk, despite risking painting a target on my back or my family's back, I decided to go to try to tell Arabmat and his family that he only had days to live. I walked back to his house, climbed back up his log ladder, sat down next to him, and with as careful language as I could muster, I said this, Arabmat, I'm so sorry for your sickness, but I have bad news. The doctor responded to me, and the doctor says this, that those who have the same sickness that you have, after a few days, they usually die. I said, here's some pain medicine. This medicine won't take your sickness away, but when you're feeling pain, if you eat one of these, your pain will be less. I gave him some strong pain medicine, and then I left. I went back to my house and I sat and I wondered and I worried, did I do the right thing or did I just create a huge problem? The next day, I saw a new face in Wabaku, somebody I'd never met before, never seen before. I shook his hand, greeted him politely, and he walked off. Later that afternoon, I found out that new guy in our village was the witch doctor, the sorcerer from downriver. They had called him up so that he could try to discern who broke the spirit's laws that made the spirits angry to shoot Arabmat with these invisible arrows to give him this sickness. So the witch doctor went into Arabmat's house. He sat, closed his eyes, fell into something of a trance, and started to try to commune with the evil spirits. He was asking them, who offended your rules, who broke your laws, who made you angry so that you gave Arabmat this sickness? But despite being paid handsomely, this witch doctor sorcerer was unable to decipher the cause of Arabmat's sickness. The results were inconclusive. And that meant that there was only one other reason that Arabmat could be sick and dying. Somebody, an enemy, must have hired a different sorcerer to send the spirit after him. The next day, I heard the village drum ringing out to summon all the people for a village meeting. Instead of meeting in the clearing where we usually met, all the people met right at Arabmat's house. I followed the crowd there to see what would happen. One by one, all the adults in the village were climbing his ladder, shaking Arabmat's hand, and then walking back down. They had pulled Arabmat's bed right to the edge of his house. He was sleeping right at the top of the ladder. So every adult would go up, shake his hand, go back down. I didn't know what they were saying, so I moved closer and watched this up close, and I could hear what they were saying. And I noticed that they were all using the exact same phrase. Somebody would go up the ladder and say, Moyanai brero brenai mani, shake his hand, and then go back down the ladder. The next person would go up, Moyanai brero brenai mani, and go back down. Next person, Moyanai brero brenai mani, and I'll go back down. The exact same phrase was used every single time, and I asked, what are they saying? What does that mean? And somebody told me, it means, no, I didn't work sorcery on you. Immediately I realized what was happening. They weren't just saying goodbye or wishing him well, no. They were trying to decipher by process of elimination who was responsible for hiring the Sangumaman, hiring the sorcerer to give Arabmat this sickness. Anybody who came to shake his hand was ruled out. But anybody who was sitting in their house or anybody who refused to go up the ladder and shake Arabmat's hand, they were suspect number one for hiring the sorcerer that caused Arabmat's sickness. I had a quick, lightning-type debate within myself. Do I go up the ladder and shake his hand? I didn't know any sorcery. Of course I didn't work sorcery on him. My letter from Hogwarts never came. But I also knew that this was a village ritual. And from past experience, I had learned that to participate in a village ritual can often get you in hot water because you don't know what's beneath the surface, what meanings are underneath the surface. So I chose not to go up the ladder, to not shake his hand, and to not say, Yanai brero brenai mani. Even though that would have been true, I decided I didn't want to participate in this ritual. Later on, and in a different story, I'll tell you the repercussions of that decision. But I didn't know the repercussions just then. The next day, I went back to Arabmat's house to check on him again, and he was even worse than he was the day before. At this point, his breathing was labored. His eyes were opening and closing slowly. His family was there with leaves trying to keep the flies off of him, keep him cool, sometimes giving him water. He wasn't really speaking. He was in and out of consciousness. I was sitting with him and I knew this would be my last conversation with Arabmat. So I thought, if this is my last chance, maybe I should try to share the gospel with him. Now at this point, I didn't know hardly any of their tribal language. I'd only learned nouns. So sharing the gospel in their tribal language was not going to happen. But I did know the national language, Melanesian Pidgin or Tokpisin. It was his second language, but I thought maybe he could understand enough that he could hear the gospel, here on his deathbed, believe it. But in the Melanesian Pidgin language, I still had to plan everything I said before it would even come out somewhat accurately. But I thought, you know what, I'm going to try it anyway. Maybe the Lord can use this imperfect effort to share the gospel. So I went ahead and tried it, and it sounded something like this. I said, Arabmat, bipo tru, Yahweh emi wokim dispra sky na dispra ground. Olgeda diwa na olgeda something lo dispra ground, emiat emi wokim emblongem. I'm walking one pla man, name long him Adam. Now one pla Mary, name long him Eve. Now I'm giving all get a something long han blo tupla. Now I'm talking tupla. All get a kai kai lo displa God in me put him you pla long him. You pla ken kai kai. Taso displa one pla dy. No ken kai kai blo displa one pla dy taso. Now not pla day sine ken me come. Now me give on him Eve. Now I'm talking him. Am I right? You can kai kai him displa something. And by you know he not die. Kai kai taso. Now Eve him kissing displa kai kai. Now me kai kai. And giving lo man blow him. Now man blow him to Adam. M to him me kai kai. Tupla sakim talk long Yahweh. Tupla turning backside long Yahweh. Now Yahweh me come talk long tupla. Now Yahweh am rasim tupla long God and long him. Now Yahweh to him me got talk long displa snake him talking him behind. Picking any tumbuna picking any man blow me. And by come now krungut him head long you. Now win him you all get that. I told the story like that of the Garden of Eden in the fall. I went all the way through Abraham and Isaac, Moses and Egypt and Joshua and tried to summarize the whole story of the Bible as best I could. I got through to finally to Jesus, and I talked about Jesus demonstrating his power over the spirit world. He could cast out a demon. Even the wind and the waves obeyed him. He could remove a sickness with just a word. But even though Jesus never turned his back on Yahweh, they still wanted to kill him. They couldn't kill him, but Jesus laid down his life, sacrificed himself like Isaac's sheep for us so that he could take away the penalty of our turning our backs on Yahweh. And they killed him on a tree. On the third day, God raised Jesus from the dead, defeating Satan, winning Satan's power, beating the evil spirits. And all that Yahweh was asking for us to do was to hear this talk, believe it, understand it, and to follow Jesus' footprints, his leg marks. I finished the story like that, and I waited for some kind of a response from Arabmat. Did he hear anything I had to say? He started shuffling a little bit. He got up on one elbow, and he was about to say something. I leaned in to hear what he would say, and he said this. He said, Di edebe adani, which means, give me a smoke. Now, I usually carry tobacco with me to share with the people. So I got some tobacco, handed it to him. I lit it for him. He laid back down, and our conversation was over. I went back to my house, and a few hours later, Arabmat's family had called for Lakin to come because Arabmat was dying. They didn't call for me, and I wondered about that, and I worried about that. They were asking for my wife now instead. In a different story, I'll tell you why. When Lakin got there, she was telling me, breathing with this raspiness, the death rattle. And she was there with the family, holding their hands as he did slowly over the next few hours die. She stayed and cried and wept with the family. And after some time, she came back home. And just as she got home, I heard the village drum ringing out again in the village. But this time it was with a slow cadence. That was an announcement that somebody in the village had died. Arabmat was gone. We could hear the wailing coming from his house. It was a heavy moment for us because we didn't get there in time. We weren't able to learn the language fast enough to share the gospel with Arabmat in his own language in a way he could understand before he died. But we also knew that this was in God's hands. And we remembered that there were generations of people that lived and died here in Wabaku before they were able to hear God's talk. But we prayed that he would be the last one, that no one else would have to die before we had a chance to share God's talk with them. We were so close. My prayers turned to Arabmat's wives and his children. My prayer for them was that when the time came for us to share the gospel, to share God's full story with them, that Arabmat's family would come and listen and understand and hear. And that their response to hearing God's talk would be one of saving faith, belief, joy, and not a response like their father's was, which was, Di edebe adani, give me a smoke.